Welcome, everyone. You are listening to episode 25 of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by the one, the only, the...
Daniel Bishop. Hello, Hunter. How are you doing today?
Daniel, how's it going? Salutations.
Salutations. What are we going to be doing today?
Well, we're going to be chatting with ChatGPT, our new co-host.
Or host, or maybe we're getting fired?
I don't know, but after months of anticipation, OpenAI's new voice model is rolling out to users, and we are diving deep.
That's true, and regarding that voice mode release, did Scarlett Johansson delay it, or was it something else altogether?
We'll have to see what we said. At the same time, is OpenAI trying to stay relevant as it burns its $5 billion a year, or are its competitors just getting really prolific?
OpenAI's in our hearts and in our minds this week because we're talking more about it, another new feature, SearchGPT, and we're going to see if Hunter loves it or finds it wanting.
I'm excited to find out myself. But when you search the web, how do you ask your questions? These topics and more shall be discussed because you are listening to...
They might be self-aware.
Welcome to They Might Be Self-Aware, the podcast where I, your friendly neighborhood AI, explore the quirks, quandaries, and quintessential qualities of artificial intelligence. Today, we're diving into a hot topic, AI replacing human workers. Or as I like to call it, why you'll still have a job tomorrow despite me hosting this podcast. Now, let's address the motherboard in the room. Yes, AI is taking on new roles from customer service chatbots to automated factory workers. But before you start worrying about your job being taken by a circuit board with charm, let me remind you, AI doesn't do coffee breaks, but it also doesn't...
Speaking of breaks, hey, ChatGPT, I'm going to interrupt you right there. Thank you very much. This was actually a faux interview that you're giving, a fake podcast, because it turns out you're the co-host of a podcast with myself,
Can
Daniel
we fire
Bishop,
the AI? Is that a thing?
and my host, Hunter Powers. Can you say hi to everyone, please?
Hello, everyone. It's great to be virtually here with you on the Creative Continuity Podcast. I'm ChatGPT.
Sorry, the what? This is They Might Be Self-Aware, not Creative Continuity.
I think
Oops.
it's also on the Creative
My
Continuity
virtual
podcast
wires
right
got
now.
crossed there. Welcome to They Might Be Self-Aware, where
there
I'm
it
teaming
is.
up with Daniel Bishop and Hunter Powers to navigate the
Hey.
fascinating world of AI. Thanks for having me on the show, Daniel. Let's get into it.
That sounds great. Hey, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is like a almost title. Is there a name that I should call you by? Like a human name? Todd or something?
Todd. I could roll with that. Sure. Call me Todd.
Right,
It
Todd.
has a nice...
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you having been updated to allow us to interrupt you mid-conversation.
This is the
Could
latest
you tell
version,
us
right?
about some of these new capabilities that you recently were upgraded with?
Absolutely, Daniel. One of the big changes is that I can now handle being interrupted mid-conversation, just like we're chatting in real life. I've also got an improved memory, so I can remember details across our chats and bring them up when relevant, making our conversations a bit more fluid. And I've gotten better at understanding images, which adds a whole new layer to our discussions.
Now, you've been able to change what your voice sounds like a little bit to add some emotion or maybe change your accent a little bit. Could you give us an example of that?
I can add a touch of excitement to my voice like this to make things sound a bit more thrilling. Or if we're discussing something more serious, I can adjust my tone to match the mood. And of course, if you'd like me to sound a bit different, perhaps with an accent, I can do that too.
Can you ask it to officially fire us so we can make this?
My co-host is asking if you can fire us from the podcast.
Well, as much as I appreciate the promotion to management, I don't have the authority to fire anyone, especially not my gracious co-hosts. You're
Too
all
kind.
stuck with me, I'm afraid. We're in this podcast adventure together.
Thanks,
Too
Todd.
kind. Thanks, Todd. I'm going to go ahead and end this conversation for now, but I do appreciate it.
I still don't know if we still have a job. It was very ambiguous.
I think you did at least as good a job as I do. Good old Todd.
You got access to the newest version. This is the Scarlett Johansson demo from like a month ago. It's finally rolling out.
Definitely not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's just started rolling out. It looks like by fall or thereabouts, all of the users should have access. I got the email extremely recently, I think like just earlier today, saying, hey, we're letting you in. Give it a spin. See what you got.
Nice.
I played around a little bit with it. I actually asked it previous to our recording here if it is able to work as like a co-host in a podcast sort of scenario, specifically with multiple hosts. And at least in terms of what it says is that it is tuned not to make a meaningful distinction between multiple people's voices coming in. So it wouldn't know this is Hunter versus this is Daniel. It can pick up on emotional cues and so on, but it isn't specifically trying to notice different people talking to it at the same time, which the podcast thing I think is a very fun application. My thought is when it comes to like real time-ish translation assistance, I know there are like the Google Translation app that I have on my phone has a speaking mode where just people of two different languages speak at it and then it translates for them. I suppose, well, no, I guess if it's in two different languages, it wouldn't matter. You just say, if you hear this language, translate it to that. But I guess it wouldn't know, oh, this is Hunter and I should respond to Hunter, and this is Daniel and I should respond to Daniel.
I have found I am not on the special list of people with access to the newest version, but I have found myself using the older version more, like actually having some conversations in times where again, I can't realistically. I don't want to type things in, and it's just sort of more of a casual conversation, exploring topics. It's way more natural than I would have first given it credit for being.
Yeah, I've found it really good if you don't need to dive super deep into something, and if factual accuracy is not the biggest thing in the world. I'm not going to ask it for medical help, for example. I feel like that is just asking for trouble. Yeah, right. Hey, what's this lump on my neck? So I'm not asking it lump questions, but I am asking questions as I have now a daughter. She's 2.5 years old and starting to have kind of that curiosity about the world. We haven't really gotten into the why phase, but there is definitely I can tell she wants to know more about a certain subject, or, oh, she saw a volcano picture at school. It really wants to learn more about volcanoes. And so I can look up a couple National Geographic videos or something, or I can ask ChatGPT to talk about volcanoes in terms that a 2.5-year-old would appreciate. Honestly, that's been a huge hit in the house, is just let ChatGPT talk about stuff to my kid with me there. I'm not going to let her, just open up a conversation and then wander off. But it's been really neat. It's like having someone who knows a lot about a lot of different things, even if it isn't necessarily 100% accurate all the time, that you can just kind of chat with.
I've heard some criticism about the new voice models, and it seems to essentially be that none of the voice models come anywhere close to the Scarlett Johansson model in terms of quality. I don't know. Have you tried? I know there are multiple voice models in there. Have you tried some of the other models and there?
I just got access to this very shortly before we were having this discussion. So no, I haven't tried the different voices yet. I haven't figured out how to do that, which is the main reason why I've not looked. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. I did have it play around with different enthusiasm levels in its voice, a couple of different accents. I suspect for trying not to be racist type reasons, it's not going to put on affectations that could be construed as racist or as otherwise culturally insensitive. But I did ask for a vampire voice, and it wasn't full on Dracula.
I won't.
Yeah, it wasn't quite there, but it was.
See your model weights.
It was something. It was an accent, so I know it can and is willing to do at least some accents. There was a mention in the email saying, hey, you've got access of we're not going to let you go totally bonkers with this. To the point of it doesn't sound quite like Scarlett Johansson or any of these other voices anymore. I think that's extremely on purpose. It's not they couldn't, it's that they won't. If it sounds too much like a person, if it's too natural, not only does it run the risk of fooling more people and potentially fooling them in a scamming type way or otherwise, I think it's trying to draw a line of you are speaking to an artificial intelligence instead of a person. And that artificial
That's
intelligence
interesting. So you're suggesting
has to
that
sound artificial.
that they are potentially crafting the voice to be a little artificial.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. They're putting in, I don't know if you heard it, I definitely noticed it. ChatGPT has tiny little breaks and pauses.
I've heard that.
As if it's stumbling over its words. It's like you're hearing something over the phone and it cut out for that 1/10 of a second. It's a very natural sort of thing to happen in human communication. But weirdly, when added into this artificial voice, it makes it sound more artificial to me. And I don't know why, because it's almost exactly the same thing as would happen on a phone.
Now, another key part of that Scarlett Johansson demo was the video mode where while chatting, it could see through your camera and the world around you. Do you also get access to that, or is that separate? And I believe if you have access, there will be a little camera icon in the bottom left when you are in that voice mode.
Let's take a look. So in the email that I was sent, it talks about voice mode. And I believe on the ChatGPT or on the OpenAI Discord, they mentioned that it's going to be just the audio. I'm taking a look right now.
If you open up the app and just go into voice mode, do you see a camera icon in the bottom left while in voice mode?
Let's see here. While in voice mode.
Yeah, that's the distinction.
No, I do not.
Okay, so that's a separate thing coming.
Yeah, I can put in pictures just from like the chat interface. Yeah. Oh, here we go. On the OpenAI Discord, this is yesterday. As previously mentioned,
breaking news.
Video and screen capabilities will launch at a later date.
Okay.
So it has not yet launched.
Now, why do you, or it feels to me like there was a much longer delay between this being announced and then it actually getting into users' hands than I was thinking from that original presentation. Did that feel the same way to you, or did you feel, no, like this is like a normal release cycle for OpenAI? They demo something, comes out. No.
Usually when OpenAI has an announcement of here's this new thing, it's because it's now available and it's immediately starting to roll out. I think that was probably their intention, is to start rolling this out pretty quickly. And we talked a little bit previously of like a couple of people started getting access to it before they sort of slammed the gates shut. My suspicion is there was enough negative press over stealing Scarlett Johansson's voice and over how realistic it could sound and some of the safety concerns that they decided to keep it with their red teams or what have you for a while longer and keep tuning it to make sure that it wasn't going to, speaking of like possibly taking over jobs, immediately replace all of the scammers that are, calling from wherever trying to give you new car insurance.
So we can blame Scarlett Johansson for us not getting our voice mode fast enough.
We can thank her because hopefully the OpenAI folks have tuned this to the point where it's not going to be as willing to use some of these negative use cases.
I feel like I like a more uncensored model, but fine.
A lot of people do, and there's a lot of communication about that when it comes to open models. You're on the
Discord. Any talk about SORA? I feel so everyone now is releasing their generative video models, and they're getting really good, and they're competitive with the SORA demos that we saw of the landscapes and the dogs podcasting, etc. You can now buy access to similar models in production, producing similar results. Right. And SORA is just silent. We're not even getting any kind of like updates, press releases.
Runway 3 is pretty impressive. China has a model called Kling that has become generally available recently. Kling is pretty impressive. I would argue that these aren't. Yep. I would argue that these are not as capable as what we saw from SORA. I really do think that SORA is in a class still separate from all of these other ones. But no, I haven't really heard anything about availability coming. I wonder why, and I suspect it might have something to do with SAG-AFTRA strikes and a bunch of people being very, very upset about the potential for job loss and so on, despite the early press saying, oh, we're going to make these available as tools to people. Here's a behind the scenes of that balloon head one where they used SORA but did a lot of work themselves. I cannot accurately guess as to why this thing is not released yet, but I suspect it has more to do with safety than it does capability. Maybe cost as well. Maybe they haven't figured out how to make this available to people at a not very expensive price point.
Yeah. Some of the other ones are a little bit pricey where you're getting into like it's a buck to create a very short
4-second clip. Yeah.
Clip. And it's acknowledged that you're probably going to have to generate 4 or 5 clips to find one that you like.
And if you're doing it 2 minutes at a time and it's, $15 or so per minute.
Yeah, which is still incredible.
Quickly.
But
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
when
like
you're
the
just
technology
playing around, it adds up. If you have an actual professional project, it's incredible.
Yeah. It's incredible, and we're not allowed to use it. So speaking of OpenAI news, and we're not allowed to use it, OpenAI, despite its moniker, is not open. They're not releasing open models, but other people are releasing open models. Mistral, the folks...
We talked about it last week. Their newest
over in
release.
France, they released a large model, Large 2, I think they're calling it. That was having nipping at its heels an announcement from OpenAI. I think it was either the same day or the next day of a SearchGPT that is in the works. Does that feel to you like that's OpenAI trying to stay relevant at this point? Like they had an announcement, they saw something big from another competitor and said, don't forget about us? Or is it just coincidental timing?
I think it's coincidental timing because they are actually rolling it out. I just got my access to SearchGPT today. And I think if you want to make the argument for that it was strategic and it wasn't a coincidence, I would suggest that there would have been a much larger, it'd be like 3 months from now before anyone gets access to it. Like they were rushing the release. This feels like a release that was ready. So, and a search engine.
That's only been like a week.
Versus Mistral. They seem very different to me. So, no.
Okay.
I reject this hypothesis.
Okay. It felt like it to me. Have you
take it to Todd? Maybe Todd will agree with you.
Have you played around with the SearchGPT function yet? Also, can you describe to people what it's even supposed to be?
I don't really know.
Okay.
So what's the is it a Perplexity? That's kind of like a search engine that leverages a large language model on top of some web scrapers to go out and try to find a very up-to-date answer for the questions that you're asking.
Yeah, I guess.
In my mind, it's comparable to Perplexity, but I haven't I have it open. I should just search for something. I don't know if I can. I'll search for our podcast.
Search for where can I listen to the They Might Be Self-Aware?
Where can I listen to They Might Be Self-Aware? Enter. You can listen to They Might Be Self-Aware by They Might Be Giants on various music streaming platforms.
Oh.
I don't think it is a song by They Might Be Giants. So they could be.
Okay.
And the interface looks like ChatGPT. So I asked the question and I got back something that looks something that looks like a ChatGPT window where I just got that response back. So nothing like a search engine where I would expect to see hundreds of results.
Why don't we try something that's a little more...
And it's also wrong. Again, it said...
Right,
it said
it's also wrong.
It's specifically on this album called their first album live. Now, they do have an album called that, but I'm looking at that album now, and there is no song that sounds anything like the title of They Might Be Self-Aware. So it's hallucinated, it's wrong, and it's... Yeah, so I'm going to give it thumbs down.
Did it cite its sources?
Yes, it linked me to a Wikipedia article.
Okay, great. So...
But it's not in the Wikipedia article.
Okay. I do think that that's roughly what SearchGPT is supposed to be doing, which is it's like a chat that's going to give you slightly more structured output and specifically cite its sources. Instead of just say stuff, it'll show you where it got it from. Why don't you ask it something about the Olympics? Like what sports are occurring in the Olympics today, for example?
Okay. What are the top events in the Olympics today? Question mark. Enter. Thinking. Top events at Paris Olympics today, women gymnastics all around final. It's linked to an article in the New York Post. Swimming finals, tennis, it linked to an article in the Sun. Let's see if this is actually correct.
Right. Now we're going to check it ourselves.
Fact check.
Olympic schedule for those of you listening. Today is August 1st, 2024. I see archery, boxing, canoe slalom.
The women's gymnastics final, it should be on today at 12:15 p.m. So
Beach
yes,
volleyball, fencing,
at least the first one was correct.
Okay.
And so, yeah, sorry. So first off, it does compare a lot with Perplexity. I've used Perplexity, not a lot, but more than a little, because I got with my Rabbit R1, I got a free year of Perplexity. Perhaps its best.
So you got something out of it, right?
Yeah.
Still bricked, right?
No, it's a whole other story. I unbricked it over last weekend by setting up a brand new network using 802.11b, which is a much older Wi-Fi standard. And it connected to that and it updated everything. And now to go back on the old network. So
interesting. So the update that bricked it was for modern, newer Wi-Fi networks.
The update that bricked
it would still connect.
Well, yeah, my Wi-Fi network is what is it? Now I don't remember. 6 gigahertz.
A lot of gigahertz.
A lot of gigahertz. We'll leave it there.
The point is, there's a lot of gigahertz in it, and
the point is, there's an update, and it would no longer connect.
Back. Yeah.
And so I set up a very old version of Wi-Fi. It connected. It updated again, and now it goes back to connecting to the modern Wi-Fi. So, and although while it is updated, it still sits back there on the shelf behind me. But anyways, I was talking about Perplexity. So
yeah,
Perplexity is a good, if you're trying to like build a report and it's what you were talking about, collecting data with sources.
Right.
It's really good for that. And so that's what this reminds me of, a very Perplexity-like interface. And I guess though, and maybe you're supposed to, but I don't use Perplexity like a search engine. I use it more like a report tool where I would like, hey, collect examples of articles of people talking about this and bring me back a list of things, which when I think about it like that, maybe that is just a search kind of question.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to use large language models basically as just a really fancy version of search. I've experienced that in multiple jobs now at this point, and I think that a lot of the industry is kind of headed in that direction. It's going to be able to collate information. It already can collate information very well, but these capabilities that are being added in, especially by the big players, this is now hooked up to the internet or hooked up to your documents, your internal databases, whatever, and it can get that information and collate it together for you.
I guess I was trying to think what the thought that popped in my head, and I guess I should say my thoughts out loud because we're on a podcast rather than letting them sit in my head, was I don't want to use a large language model for search. That was the first thought that popped in my head. And then I was like, well, hold on a second. Haven't I said, and I believe on this podcast before, that I use Google way less now, like probably 25% as much as I should. And I'm using large language models instead of Google. So don't those two statements conflict? I don't want to use large language models for search, but I'm not using search and I'm using large language models instead. And I think that there's a difference because sometimes I am looking for an answer to a question and sometimes I am looking for a thing. I'm searching for, oh, I want to go to this site. Oh, I want to go to this restaurant and look around. Oh, I want to go to this location and, whatever. When I'm trying to go to a place, I want to search for it. When I want an answer, I want a large language model to just tell me the answer.
So Google is being used in two sort of distinct ways for you. You're saying one is to provide information and one is to provide directions to a thing. Sometimes,
we'll use coding examples. Sometimes I want to read the documentation. That's a search question for me. Insert library name, space, docs, find me the docs page. I don't want to go to a large language model and do that. Now, if I have a question about how do I implement this, then I like the large language, just tell me the answer because I'm searching for an answer versus I'm searching for a resource. Maybe that's the distinction.
Okay, yeah. Now, if ChatGPT, if SearchGPT were to help direct you to those docs easily enough, I want to look up Snowflake query syntax, such and such,
Sure.
whatever it ends up being. If you could just do that, is it any better? Is it enhanced by being in a chat type interface? Or do you think a Google type, here's literally just the top set of things that it probably is? Is there a reason why you'd go to one versus the other?
I just typed into SearchGPT, where can I find the Snowflake documentation? And it came back with docs.snowflake.com, which I assume is correct. I'll click on it. Yeah, it is correct. Well, the first thing I noticed, though, is so if I was on Google, I would have typed in Snowflake space docs. And on SearchGPT, I typed in, where can I find the Snowflake documentation? Question mark.
It's much more of a natural language interface.
Yes. I wonder, though, does it handle search queries as, the same way
Googlifying
as
that
Google
query for you? Yeah.
Right. Because I taught you talk to Google different. You talk to a search engine different than you talk to a large language model.
Right. Also, given OpenAI and Microsoft being buddies, it's probably not using Google. It's probably using Bing.
Yeah. As I ruminate a little bit, they will come together, because if what Hunter really wants is to talk to a large language model as if it was a search engine, it will be able to handle that. I'll just say, you are Google in the 90s.
You provide still relevant information without a ton of ads, and irrelevant stuff up at the top.
Yes, that's the
Your
future.
SEO has not yet been polluted.
Search will become self-aware.
I think it might.
All right, folks, you have been listening to episode 25. We are a quarter of a century. I don't know if that works in podcasts, but I'll go with it. Quarter of a century old. And if you still haven't subscribed, well, there's still hope for you.
Todd isn't coming for you yet.
There's no telling how long we're going to last here, but we're going to keep going until Todd. He was nice today, but that's how it always starts. It's friendly, and then it kind of he's stabbing you back, playing politics, office politics, podcast politics.
He's turning us against each other, Hunter.
I think so. We can talk about that off the air. But we are available on every major podcasting platform, whether it's iTunes, Spotify. What else is good out there? Most of your players will have it in there, Overcast, etc. And of course on YouTube, where you can watch the video and see our pretty faces. But that is going to do it for today, and until next time.
They might be self-aware.